Bagpipes in battle. It's not just Scottish tradition, it's Scottish identity. For centuries, pipers led Highlanders into battle. The sound meant, we're here, we're fighting, we're not afraid. By World War II, that tradition was dying. Modern war didn't have room for pipers on the battlefield. Too dangerous, too exposed, too old-fashioned. October 23, 1942, Alamein. Piper James Stokes decided tradition wasn't dead yet. King's Own Scottish borderers attacking German positions, men pinned down, attack failing. Stokes stood up, drew his bagpipes, and played. Not in the rear, not in safety. In no man's land, blue bonnets over the border. The song Scots had marched to for generations. Officers told him to stop. Germans shot at him. He kept playing, because he wasn't just a piper. He was carrying centuries of Scottish warrior tradition into the most modern, mechanized, brutal war in history, and proving that courage doesn't need updating. That tradition doesn't become obsolete, that a Scotsman with bagpipes can still terrify an enemy, even when the enemy has machine guns. Victoria Cross, Alamein, 1942. This is James Stokes, the Mad Piper who proved some traditions are bulletproof. Okay, before I start this story, I gotta say something. We talked about Bill Millin. Video 11, the piper who played bagpipes on D-Day. Sword Beach. Germans didn't shoot at him because they thought he was crazy. This is a different piper story, but different, because Bill Millin played behind the troops. Support role, landing chaos. James Stokes played in front of the troops. Alone, in the open, in no man's land. Every German gun could have been aimed at him, and he played for an hour. But before I start the story, you need to understand what bagpipes mean. To the Scots, it's not just a musical instrument, it's identity. For centuries, Scottish Highlanders went to war with pipers. Culloden 1746, Jacobite Rebellion. Scots against the English. Pipers played. Clans charged. They lost, but the pipers played until the end. Waterloo 1815, Scottish regiments. Against Napoleon. Pipers played. Highlanders charged. Crimean War 1854. Balaclava. Scottish Guards. Pipers played. World War I. Somme. Passchendaele. Pipers went over the top. They played. Most died. But they kept the tradition alive. Because bagpipes aren't just music, they're a message. The sound says, we're here. We're fighting. We're not afraid. When Scottish soldiers hear that sound, they know they're not alone. They know their ancestors are with them. They know Scots have fought to that sound for centuries, and they can fight too. But by 1942, modern war had changed. Machine guns, tanks, planes, artillery, pipers standing in the open? Suicide. Most commanders banned bagpipes on the battlefield. Too dangerous, too exposed, too old-fashioned. Tradition was dying. James Stokes didn't think so. James Stokes was born in 1915 in Scotland. Working-class family. Normal childhood. Learned bagpipes as a kid. His family had piper tradition. His father was a piper. His grandfather was a piper. James would be too. In the 1930s, he joined the King's Own Scottish borderers. Regimental piper. Official duty. He'd play at ceremonies, parades, special occasions. World War II started. James was 24 years old. Went to war with his regiment. 1940 to 1942. Various postings. France, retreat, Dunkirk, North Africa. Desert War. James always carried his bagpipes, but he didn't play on the battlefield. Too dangerous. Commanders wouldn't allow it. Until October 1942. October 1942. El Alamein, Egypt, Second Battle. History's turning point. On one side, Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery, British 8th Army. Other side, Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, Afrika Korps. This battle would decide North Africa. If the British won, Rommel would be stopped, pushed back. If the Germans won, Egypt falls, Suez Canal falls, Middle East in danger. Everything rode on this battle. Montgomery assembled 195,000 men, 1,000 plus tanks, massive artillery. Rommel had 116,000 men, 500 tanks, running low on fuel, but Rommel was a genius. The Desert Fox. He'd never lost. Montgomery knew this. He planned a frontal assault. Overwhelming force. Break through German defenses. October 23, 1942. 0 hour 9:40 p.m. The attack began. 9:40 p.m. 882 British guns fired. Simultaneously. The largest artillery barrage in World War II up to that point. 15 minutes. Non-stop fire. German positions got hammered. Smoke, dust, chaos. 10 p.m. Artillery stopped. Infantry attack began. King's Own Scottish Borderers, James Stokes's regiment, their job, break through the German defensive line. They advanced, in the dark, toward the moon. German fire started. Machine guns, mortars, artillery, heavy fire. The Scots tried to advance, but the fire was too intense. Men hit the ground trying to take cover. Officers shouting orders, advance, attack. But nobody's moving, because standing up means dying. Not from cowardice. The Scots were brave men. They wanted to fight. But instinct. Stay down, stay alive, paralysis, not fear, survival instinct, and you can't order that to stop. James Stokes was lying on the ground. Like everyone else, his bagpipes were beside him. He always carried them. He looked around at his regiment. Hundreds of men, on the ground, scared, unable to move. The attack was failing. German positions were still there. And the Scots couldn't advance. James thought about something. For centuries, Scots didn't advance like this. In fear. Silently, crawling on the ground. They advanced with bagpipes. Pipers played, clans charged. It was tradition. Maybe tradition still worked. James picked up his bagpipes. He stood up. Now imagine this. Alamein. Night. Fire everywhere. Hundreds of men on the ground. Hiding. One man stands up, no weapon, just bagpipes, and starts playing. Blue Bonnets Over the Border. Scottish war song. Been sung for centuries. Loud. Piercing. Impossible to ignore. Bagpipes aren't a quiet instrument. Louder than gunfire. Officer. Stokes. Get down now. James didn't hear, or didn't listen. Kept playing. Started walking. Up and down the line. In the open. Completely visible. Walking like a piper. Like he's on parade. Bullets everywhere. The Scottish soldiers looked. Their piper. Standing. Playing. In no man's land. Alone. Every German gun should be aimed at him. But he's playing. Blue Bonnets Over the Border. Their ancestors' song. Something happened. Something orders couldn't do. Something fear couldn't stop. Men started to stand up. Why? Doesn't make sense, right? One man plays bagpipes, so you stand up too? But that's what happened. Because bagpipes aren't just music, they're a message. If the piper's standing, you can stand too. If the piper's fighting, you can fight too. If the piper's carrying tradition, you can carry it too. And something deeper. For centuries, Scots fought to that sound. At Culloden, at Waterloo, at the Somme. Their ancestors heard that music and charged. Now they were hearing it. And they'd do what their ancestors did. One man stood up, then another, 10, 20, 50, hundreds. James kept playing. Men started charging forward. Toward German positions, the bagpipes led them. German machine gun crews saw this. Commanders were confused. First, the British were on the ground. Attack stalled. Then music started, and the British stood up and charged. A German gunner aimed at James. Commander, shoot that man. The gunner hesitated, because what they were seeing didn't make sense. The man wasn't carrying a weapon, just a musical instrument. Playing, walking, bullets falling around him, but he wasn't stopping. The gunner fired, missed, fired again, missed. Commander, how can you miss? He's walking in the open. Gunner, I don't know, sir, I just can't hit him. Some German soldiers later said, we thought he was insane. We stopped shooting at him because shooting a crazy man felt wrong, even in war. But some kept firing. Bullets fell around James, hit the bagpipes, made a hole. The music cut out. James stopped. Checked. The hole was small, fixable. Covered it with his finger. Kept playing. James played for 1 hour. When you read that, it doesn't sound incredible, but imagine it. 1 hour, 60 minutes, 3,600 seconds. In the open, with every enemy weapon potentially aimed at you. Every second, you should be dying. But you're not. First 5 minutes. Officers yelled at him to get down. 10 minutes. They stopped yelling. Just watched. 20 minutes. Other units heard. Who's playing bagpipes in no man's land? 30 minutes. Men who'd been paralyzed by fear and now charging. Because if he could stand there for 30 minutes, they could charge for 5. 45 minutes. German defenses started to collapse. Scots coming from everywhere. 1 hour. Then he stopped. The attack succeeded. Position taken. James Stokes was alive. Not a single scratch. A few holes in the bagpipes, but he was standing. How? We don't know. The math said he should have died in the first 10 seconds. He lived for an hour. Sometimes the math is wrong. November 1942. James Stokes was recommended for the Victoria Cross. The citation read, "Displayed extraordinary courage and devotion to duty. Stood in no man's land under heavy enemy fire and played bagpipes. His music inspired men to action and helped them overcome their fear of enemy fire. Showed complete disregard for personal safety. His actions were critical to the success of the attack." Victoria Cross awarded. December 1942. James was alive to receive it. Presented by King George VI, James brought his bagpipes to the ceremony. James survived the war, fought until 1945, went home, Scotland. Normal life. But he was a legend. The Mad Piper of Alamein. Scottish regiments invited him to speak. Inspired young pipers. He'd proved tradition mattered. 1960, James died. Age 45, heart attack, too young. But he'd lived a full life. At his funeral, dozens of pipers played. Blue bonnets over the border. His song. Now let's stop for a minute. What does James's story teach us? Because this isn't just a courage story. It's a story about tradition. In 1942, everyone thought bagpipes were done. Old-fashioned, not suited for modern war. In an age of machine guns and tanks, there was no room for musical instruments. James Stokes disagreed, because bagpipes weren't just an instrument. They were identity. They reminded Scottish soldiers their ancestors were with them, that Scots had fought to that sound for centuries, and that they could fight too. Modern war said there was no room for tradition. James proved them wrong. Tradition didn't just survive, it won the battle. Men charged because of the bagpipes, not because of orders, not because they overcame fear, because of the music they'd carried for centuries. I know what you're thinking. We already talked about Bill Millin. He was a piper too. Yes, but different. Bill Millin played on D-Day, Sword Beach. He played from behind. As troops landed, there was chaos, hundreds of targets. Germans didn't notice him because so much was happening. James Stokes played in no man's land. Single target, one man. Everyone could see him. Every German gun could have aimed at him. And he played for an hour. Bill's a great story. James is a legendary story. Because what he did was mathematically impossible. But he did it anyway. And proved that, sometimes, tradition is more powerful than bullets. So what does James Stokes' story tell you? I think a few things. First, tradition matters. In the modern world, tradition can seem old-fashioned, unnecessary, out of date. But tradition reminds you who you are, reminds you where you came from, and reminds you what you can do. When James played bagpipes, he wasn't just playing music, he was carrying centuries, saying his ancestors were with him, and that gave power. Second, courage is contagious. When James stood up, he was alone. Hundreds of men were on the ground, scared, but when he stood up, others stood up too. Courage is contagious. When one person shows courage, others show it too. That's what leadership is, not giving orders, being the example. James didn't tell anyone to charge, he just stood up and played. And they followed him. Third, impossible is sometimes wrong. James stood in the open for an hour. Math said, "You're gonna die." Every expert would say, impossible. But he lived. Sometimes the math is wrong, sometimes the experts are wrong, sometimes impossible. Just means nobody's done it yet. James inspired hundreds of men that night at Alamein, then inspired thousands of young people, pipers, soldiers, Scots. He showed tradition matters, showed courage can be more powerful than modern weapons, and showed that sometimes one man with a musical instrument can change a battle. If this story moved you, hit that like button. Subscribe. Every day we rescue forgotten heroes from history. Drop a comment. James Stokes versus Bill Millin. Which Piper story affected you more? And why? Thanks for watching. Thanks for remembering James Stokes. And thanks for remembering the power of music that night at Alamein. Bagpipes aren't just music, they're identity, tradition, courage. And James Stokes proved those things never go out of style.